Welcome to Missions Monday with Pastor Brent Oliver from Delphi First Assembly of God and Kokomo Southview Church. Today, we are blessed to share with you God's news of what is going on in various parts of the world.
All right, well, welcome today to Missions Monday. I'm Pastor Brent Oliver at Delphi First Assembly of God. And today is with me is Russ and Sarah Farhound, and they are missionaries with the Assemblies of God. So welcome today, guys. I appreciate you being with me.
Oh, thank you. We're glad to be here with you today.
Awesome. Can you just give everyone an opportunity to kind of meet you, get a little bit to know you, and then obviously where you're going, what God's doing in your life, would you?
Well, as the pastor has mentioned, we're Russ and Sarah Farhound. We're missionaries to Equatorial Guinea. God has called us there. My wife here, Sarah, was a missionary to South Africa for 10 years. She can tell you more about that.
Yeah, your church supported me for many years as a single missionary. I was Sarah Karen's, now Sarah Farhound. So, yeah.
And so now God has called us to go to Equatorial Guinea, which is the only Spanish-speaking country in the continent of Africa. So we're in a holding period right now because of COVID, and so we're still waiting for the country to open back up so that we can get in there. But tentatively, we're looking at maybe around September to be able to get there. We were in Spain for a year to learn Spanish, and so Sarah got pregnant there, and so we stayed there a little over a year, and then we came back. We were originally going to go to Equatorial Guinea by June, but then we found out the country's closed, so we're just in a waiting period.
Sure.
But so God called me into the ministry. I gave my life to Jesus when I was about 17 years old. I had a grandma that was always praying for me and always inviting me and my brothers to come to church. And so once in a while, I can count on my hand the amount of times we went to church with her, to go to Royal Rangers or something, or to a Sunday morning service, because afterwards she would take us out to eat. And so I was having a lot of problems in my life and running the street. And then I was coming home from work one night. I was working at McDonald's in those days. I was coming home from work one night. It was about midnight. And I just looked up to the sky and I just knew there was just something hit me that God existed. It's about, the general revelation of God in Psalm 19. It says, God, the heavens declare the glory of God. So, and I didn't know that scripture then. I didn't know anything about the Bible. I'd never touched the Bible in my life up until that point. But I just looked up to the skies and I just was immediately comforted, because I was asking all these questions like all of us ask. Does God exist? Who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? You're questioning your own existence about everything. Yeah. And so I just looked up to the sky, and it just looking up at the stars, and it just immediately hit me that there's just a God. I just knew that God existed. It was a sudden revelation, and it just brought this comfort to my heart. So I go into my room that night, and I just turned on the music, and I'm getting ready to go to bed, and I'm laying there, and all of a sudden and the lights are off, and the light is on, and all of a sudden I close my eyes, and this super bright light just comes into my eyes, and I don't know, it's like, when you touch your fingers on your eyes will light up, and it creates, kind of heat, and it would turn into a light, but I wasn't even touching my eyes or anything. And this bright light, I'm so afraid of this light. I thought it was going to suck me in. I thought I was going to go blind by it, or I was going to die. I didn't know what was going to happen, because I'd never seen anything this bright. It's like it kept coming at me, even though my eyes were closed, and this light just kept coming. And so I didn't know what to do. I just immediately opened my eyes, and it went away. And so I just flipped the light off and got ready to go to bed and fell asleep and didn't think much more about it. And then not long after that, I start getting a whole lot of people coming up to me telling me about Jesus. So I'm bombarded by people, and this is when that light thing happened, I'm asking questions like, well, who is God? I want to know who it is, because if God exists, who is God? Yeah. And so now I'm getting bombarded by people telling me about Jesus, people I don't know, just walking up to me randomly, handing me a tract or saying something, making a comment about Jesus. And then I remember my grandma. And so now some time has passed, and I'm back living in the city again with my parents, and my grandma pulls up one Wednesday night, and my friend pulls up at the same time, and, he's picking me up to go use drugs, or you'll go buy drugs. And then my grandma pulls in at the same time, and she jumps out of her car, and she just looks at me and tells me I need to come with her to church tonight. And I'm just frozen in spot. I can't even move. And, I'm ready to go with my friend, but I can't even move. I'm like frozen in spot. It's like I knew something was different. I knew I had to go with my grandma that night. Wow. And so I told my friend I couldn't go with him, and he sped off upset, and I hop in the car with my grandma. She takes me to the youth group. There's a guy preaching about Jesus. his name's Rocky Polito, a little short guy, you know, saying about all this stuff about Jesus, stuff I'd never heard before in my life, but I knew it was true. So at the end of the service, he invited anybody that wants to come up and receive prayer to come up. And I ran up to the altar, I grabbed his hands, and he led me to Jesus right there.
Wow.
And so it was like, you know, I'd never heard anything like that before being said about Jesus, you know, and gave my life to Jesus. And so then I joined the Army, and they shipped me to Texas, and that's where I began to attend Assembly of God Church, and got to know my pastor there, and he helped me to get into ministry. I was in the Army in those days, but I knew I was getting out of the Army and wanted to go to Bible school. And during that time that before I got shipped to the Army, that 6-month period of high school, I'd read through the Bible like 20 times. So God was changing my life. I was giving up drugs. I'd given up cigarettes. I was giving up everything in my old life. I was giving up, you know, and it took time, but God was just changing my heart. You know, I was just reading the word of God, and it was changing my heart. It's like, it's living and active, you know, like it says, and it was just living and actively changing my life, you know? Wow. So that by the time I got to where the Army had sent me to, I knew I wanted to go into the ministry. You know, I knew I wanted to preach the gospel. I wanted to tell people about Jesus. I wanted to see as many people saved as possible. Yeah. And so then I found this Assembly of God Church there where the Army shipped me to, and I began attending there, and the pastor helped me. He knew, you know, saw the call of God on my life and wanted to help me to get into the ministry, and just helped me work towards getting that done, so that when I got out of the Army, I would be ready to go do whatever God was calling me to do.
Wow. Each person's story can be just amazing of the different ways that God reaches out and takes us from where we are. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yes. Awesome. And then of course my wife here, maybe some of the people there already know her story, that, you know, she was.
As I grew up in Indiana, just south of Fort Wayne, and then I went to Lafayette for what was then Master's Commission, as like a Bible training program. And I just, my parents got radically saved when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And so for me, it was, I saw a change in my parents' life and knew that God was real, and remember praying as a child to get healed from a wart, and God healed me. And it's just like, so for me, like, it was the faith of a child. And as a child, one of our pastors growing up was Troy and Teresa Trout, who now pastor in Greencastle, and they went to be missionaries in Africa for several years. And so I grew up hearing their stories of going to Africa, and I always thought it would be a cool thing, but I never thought I was good enough to be a missionary. I thought you had to be a really special person to be a missionary. And I also like had a dream of being married and having kids, but my husband wasn't coming. And so, because we didn't get married till I was 33 years old. And so I went to Africa because eventually God confirmed that call in my life. And I went and I served there for 10 years as a single missionary. And I worked with youth ministry and university ministry there. And while I was there, like, there was a lot of struggles. I was robbed several times my last term, and different things where eventually it was kind of like I was loving being single. And then it was like, it lifted. And it was like, I need to get married. And God just miraculously introduced us where I was able to meet Russ, a pastor in Texas, and God brought us together. We were married in 2017, and now we have 2 children, a 2-year-old named Ruth and an 8-month-old named Judah. And so really, also, God is faithful to truly give you the desires of your heart. And like, we never know, like in those moments where I was praying, where is my husband? It's like, I didn't know like what was going on in his life, but it's interesting, a lot of his story, how I would be praying for a husband, or like there was a season where I really prayed for my husband. And then it was kind of like God said, you can stop praying and just focus on what I've called you to do. And it was then that Russ really surrendered his life to God and was on the right track. When I look back at when I stopped really praying, was when he got his life right with God.
So, God says, I've done it already. Let's go.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got to meet some of the people that she led to Jesus when I went and proposed to her over there in Africa. So some of the people that she had led to Jesus that were part of those Bible studies, you know, I got to meet some of them.
And probably were praying for you with her too.
Yes.
That's a great story. So fast forward ahead. Of course, Sarah, you've been involved in missions, and now you guys are going to
Equatorial Guinea.
Okay. So describe where that's at real quick.
It's on the west coast of Africa. There's an island there and the mainland, and we're going to be living on the island.
Okay.
And it's the only Spanish speaking African country. And so.
And we're following a missionary that had been there for 30 years because this country hadn't been open. You know, we've been in Africa for like 100 years in the Assemblies of God, right around that amount of time, you know, since we were formed as a movement. But this particular country, we have not been in this country except maybe about the last 35 years. And the man that went in there, you know, back in the 70s, and he was, you know, one of the first missionaries there. The Catholics have been there, you know, and it's a predominantly Catholic place because of the Spanish influence. But the Assemblies of God, so we've only been there about 35. So this missionary that we're following, he retired about 7 or 8 years ago. And so currently there's no missionary there. So that's why when the Assemblies of God, when they found out that we wanted to go back into the mission field after we got married, we were originally trying to go to Israel, but you know, it's hard to get a visa there. They only give so many visas, you know, religious visas out because they don't want to turn Israel into a Christian state. They want it to continue to be a Jewish state. And so they don't want to, they only give so many visas out. And so we found out it was hard to get into Israel. So we said, well, this is when we were looking at where to go because we wanted to go back in the mission field. So when they found out, you know, the people that known Sarah over there, all the other missionaries and the regional director over there, when they found out that we wanted to go back in the mission field, they said, well, would you all consider coming to Africa? And then because I had a base of Spanish, I'd lived in Nicaragua for 3 years during my childhood when I was a teenager. So I had a base of Spanish. So they found out I could speak Spanish. So they said, well, we had a Spanish speaking country over here in Africa, and there's no missionary there currently. Would you all consider coming here? And we have a lot of things we want to do here, planting churches and street evangelism and different things like that, and developing the Bible school. And would you all consider coming here to Equatorial Guinea? So we said, we'll pray about it and see if this is God's will. And so after we prayed and we figured out that this is the direction that God was sending us, we contacted this missionary that we'll be following, and he's been kind of mentoring us and helping us along, letting us know the lay of the land and what we'll be doing, what he was doing, and what can be done, and you know, different vision that they had for the place. And so yeah, he's been retired for about 8 years. So we're going in there. You know, there's no current missionary there now, and we're going in there with a team. You know, they originally said, well, we want to. Because there have been other missionaries want to go there, but they were just missionary associates, and they didn't want to send a missionary associate in there by themselves. They wanted to send a fully appointed missionary and then send a team with them. Right. So when we finally did say, yeah, we believe this is the direction God is leading us towards, they said, well, we want you to try to go with a team. And so we said, okay, well, they, you know, try to recruit some people to go with you. So Sarah, during her time in South Africa, you know, had all these missions teams come over the course of the 10 years that she was there. And she can tell you a little bit more about that.
But so from Fort Wayne, there's a Chi Alpha with Lori, her name's Lori Atz, and she came 4 times. And there was a Hispanic couple on the team that every time they came, I would just joke with them, when are you going to come work with me? And then when I got married and we were praying about where to go, Equatorial Guinea was on our list, and they basically they just approached us and was like, oh, you're not going back to South Africa, are you? I was like, no, we're actually praying. And they're like, don't tell us you're going to Equatorial Guinea. And I was like, yes, that's where we're looking at going. And they're like, God told us to go to Equatorial Guinea.
And we didn't say anything about it to them before that, where we were going, or, you know, because a lot of people don't even know there's a Spanish speaking country in Africa, you know.
So now they're going as our missionary associates, and they're from Fort Wayne, Indiana as well. So God provided a team for us even when we didn't know it. So we can see God's hand in this, and they're raising their budget right now. And so even though we're in a holding pattern, we know that they're going to have the funds right when we need to leave.
That it's all timing right, you know, because the ideal thing was we get there a little time before them, and then they follow us, you know, where because they're a 2-year term, and our first term is going to be 3 years, but we've already been a year in Spain. So ours will be there 2 years also. And they don't, the Assemblies of God didn't really want to leave a missionary associate team over there by themselves, with no other missionary there. And so it's like their term would run congruent with ours. And they would be able to leave when we leave and come back and raise funds again and decide if they want to go back again or not. And then there was another missionary associate that they had to redirect from Tanzania to Tanzania that originally wanted to go to Equatorial Guinea, but they didn't want to send her by herself over there. So there's, so she's going to be part of our team over there now too. And then we have another couple from California who had a grandfather that had been in Equatorial Guinea in the Assemblies of God, or in the early days, back when that first missionary went and helped him for, I don't know if he was 2 years there or what, but so they have a connection to Equatorial Guinea too, that they felt God was calling them that direction.
So for the past 7 years, there's been no one, and now God has provided a team.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And that's what the Assemblies of God originally wanted to do, is to send a team over there.
Sure. Well, and just the story of what you're talking about, how God has lined that up and spoken to different people, and they want to go and then put it all together. That's got to give you the confidence that you need as well.
Well, yeah, because we wanted the confidence because, we want the will of God, and as America is becoming a mission field. So why leave this mission field to go over there? If we're going to go, this has got to be God, because we know we're just as needed here. We need, we are a mission field. Yeah. So we, during the time that we were praying, when they were asking us if we'd be willing to come, another thing that had happened to us is her father, Sarah here, her dad was selling a truck and he was at work and had somebody wanted to come by and look at it and called me and asked me if I could show it to the guy. So the guy comes and he's looking over the truck and giving it a once over and talking to me and asking me a little bit about myself. And I'm talking to him, and he's about 21 or 22 years old. And so finally he wants to get in the car and test drive it. And so we're driving down the road and he asks me, well, what do you do for a living? I said, well, I've been a pastor in Killeen, Texas, and my wife was a single missionary in South Africa. And we just got married, and we're looking at God's direction for us if we're going to want to go to Africa or not as missionaries. And he said, well, wow, my family, we were missionaries in Africa. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. And I've just come back, and now he's looking for a truck because he's a plumber. He's not doing plumbing work and needs a truck for that. And so he said, well, where are you all looking at? I said, well, my wife was in South Africa 10 years, and now we're looking at going to Equatorial Guinea. And then he just looked at me all surprised, said, well, we were in Equatorial Guinea. We had been there. He said we did boarding school in like Dakar or somewhere over there, but they had been in Equatorial Guinea for a while, and they've been to other Eastern or Western African countries. And that, he was just couldn't believe it. And, we couldn't believe it that this guy here is, and we're in the middle of the country here, kind of like Delphi out there. We're in the middle of the country, and this road, this guy just so happens to be looking for a truck. He just so happens to be driving down this road. He just so happens to have been in Equatorial Guinea. This is during the time we're asking God, what is your will for us direction wise?
And he ends up praying for us before he leaves, but he never bought the truck.
So, stuff like that happens, that, you're seeking the direction of God, and God has to confirm it with signs and wonders, Now, how could all those things line up perfectly? So see, for us, that's a sign and a wonder. Because for him to be just driving, we don't believe in coincidences here. We believe in, divine appointment. Yeah. So stuff like that God confirms to you, that and then you're not fearful about if this is the will of God, right. That you're not walking around fearful. Did we make the right choice? Are we putting ourselves in unwanted? Are we getting out of the will of God? Because we don't want to be out of the will of God.
Sure. Wow. God shows himself in amazing ways, and I'm sure you feel like we do. He is so real. He is so active. What he does is so tangible sometimes that for people that say, well, I don't even believe in God. God doesn't do anything. When you hear stories like this, you just see his activity in ways that no human being could put this all together. Only God could do stuff like this.
Only God can do it.
Only God could do it.
Because it's like you're praying these specific prayers, and then you get a specific answer. Now how can that be anything but God? You know what I mean?
I know.
Like God, who are you? And then people just tell me about Jesus, Okay, well then you got to look at this. Okay, I just asked who God is, and somebody's telling me about Jesus. I need to go read the Bible. I need to go confirm some things here.
And like you said, here you are, a kid in Ohio that really doesn't have church background, and one thing leads to another, and you look at where you are right now. Sarah, you've come to find out that missionaries are actually regular people, right?
Yes.
You said, I thought they were all just, you had to be just one of those kind of people to be able to do that. And yet over and over, God chooses all of us little old me's who this world might not know us, but the King of all kings says, I've chosen you for my special work.
Yes. Hallelujah.
Well, awesome. Well, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, what's going on. I encourage anyone who's watching today to be in prayer for them, that as Equatorial Guinea opens up, they'll get in there with their team and God will do great things. And obviously, he wouldn't send you there if he wasn't planning to do something. So that's exciting as well. Once again, thanks. Thank you so much for taking time to share with us today. I'll close this out and appreciate all of you watching. God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor.
This has been brought to you by Delphi First Assembly of God and Kokomo Southview Church. To contact us or send us your prayer request, testimony of answered prayer, or Bible questions, please see the information on the screen. May God's salvation through Jesus Christ overflow into your life with His joy. God bless until we see you again.